Everybody knows how important self-belief is for competition. But I wonder if people actually realize just how much impact your core belief system has on competitive performance. In particular, if you have accidentally taken on a limiting belief. Now, if you look at the history of sport, it is littered with incidents of limiting belief. And I suppose the most famous of all of these would be the 4-minute mile. Now, until Roger Bannister broke that mark, it was actually considered by science and medicine that a human body was incapable of running a mile in less than 4 minutes. But weeks after Roger Bannister did it, an Australian called John Landy did it. And then more people actually broke the mark. And very shortly, very soon, it was considered, it must have on your CV to be considered a decent middle distance runner. Now, in part 2 of this video, I'm splitting it so it's not too long. I will go into detail about how hypnosis can be used and is used to identify limiting beliefs, but also to build positive, helpful beliefs. Now, to illustrate how much impact a belief can have, when I was in primary school, we had a swimming pool, and at the end of the year, they had a swimming gala. Now, I remember I was in the final of the one-length freestyle, and I remember lining up, and over to my right, there was this guy, Brian. Now, Brian was the star of the school football team, where I was the kid who was left standing on the sideline until about the last 5 minutes, just to give me a token run on. But I knew I was a better swimmer than Brian. So this was going to be my moment to shine. That in front of all of the mums and dads, I was going to beat Brian at something, sports, and in public. So anyway, the race started, and I remember about halfway up the pool, looking over to my right, and I was in the lead. But out of the corner of my eye, I saw somebody catching me, Brian. And I remember in that moment thinking, absolutely no way. You are not stealing this moment from me. No matter how well you swim, I'm going to beat you. And he was getting closer and closer. And I kicked, and I pulled, and I fought, and he was getting closer and closer. And I kept going, and I kept going, until I eventually touched the wall. When I touched the wall, a teacher leaned over and he said to me, "I know you're one of the Sloans, which one are you?" And I said, "I'm Aidan." "Did I win?" He said, "Yes, you just held on, it was tight." So he said, "Here," and he put his hand out and he lifted me up out of the pool. And I remember standing on the bank, and I was a bit shell-shocked. I had just won. And I was looking around me for Brian, and he was nowhere to be seen. And I looked back into the pool to see if Brian was still in the water. Now, not only was Brian still in the water, he was actually still swimming. He hadn't finished his race. This man came over to me and he put his hand out to shake my hand, and he said, "Great swim." He said, "I don't usually see Andy come in second. It's rare that it happens. Who do you swim with?" And I went, "No, I don't. I'm not in any club." He said, "Wow, would you join Aer Lingus? They'd love to have you." He said, "I bring Andy out 3 or 4 mornings a week. We pass by your door. I'd pick you up. Your parents wouldn't have to do anything." The very idea of getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning to go swimming training 3 or 4 days a week just did not appeal to me. But it was only then that the penny dropped, because a teacher came over and we were standing on the bank, and he said, "Okay, there you are, there's 1, 2, 3. And it was then that I realized it was Andy that was catching me. Now, what drove me on was I believed I was racing Brian. If I had known that it was Andy, the swimmer from a swimming club who's really highly regarded, sure, silver is no disgrace. but because I believed I was racing brine, that drove me on to the swim of my life. Always believe in the power of the mind. What the mind believes, the mind achieves. Now look out for part 2. If you want to subscribe, you'll get a notification when it's posted. For Sports Hypnosis Dublin, I'm Aidan Sloan.